Hi everyone, it's your buddy and pal Karnak with Star Wars Armada Explained. You're joining me today to look at Expert Shield Tech, one of the new cards in the Rebellion of the Rim expansion. Uh, the Expert Shield Tech is a generic officer, means that he can be equipped to any faction. He's not locked into a specific. He also does not have a dot or bullet point in front of his name, means that he is not unique. You can equip him to any ship that has the officer slot free and available for him to be equipped to. How do you know equips to an officer slot? You'll see that in the bottom left-hand corner of his card. An opposite of that you'll see is point cost, which is 5 points. I do want to make a note before I get into his card and other stuff, is that he really only benefits you on ships that have redirect tokens. I wouldn't put him on any flotillas or any ships that don't have redirects because you're not going to get any benefit or use out of them otherwise. So his card, let me go ahead and bring up the board state here. There we are. So Expert Shield Tech, while defending during the spend defense token step, when you spend a redirect defense token, you may reduce the total damage from the attack by 1 instead of resolving that token's effect. Couple different things we're going to break down here. And then, so I'm going to give the easiest, short to the point ruling. And then, of course, like with everything, there's some interesting wording choices in the card that we're going to dive into if you're really into like deep rule stuff. And an interesting thing that we discovered. So if you want to know more about that, listen to the entirety of the video. If you're here just for the short and sweet explanation, here it is. It reduces damage by 1. And it takes place, when's the timing take place? It's after Brace has reduced that damage, if a Brace token was used. Pretty much where you shot for 1 damage, you can use Expert Shield Techs to spend a redirect defense token to block 1 damage. If you are suffering more than 1 damage and the ship that's being attacked is a brace, like for example, if there is 4 damage, that ship braces to 2 damage. If you spend the redirect effect with Expert Shield Text to resolve its effect, it then can block 1 more damage. So then you're only taking 1 damage to your chosen hull zone. That's the short and sweet version. If you're here just for that, that's what Expert Shield Tech does. Now let's dive in to other stuff that is with this card. Let's, like with anything, let's start at the top, work our way through the timing. So the timing is while defending. So again, the ship that he's equipped to needs to be defending against an attack, whether it be from a ship or a squadron. It needs to be resolving, its spend defense token step in the entirety of the attack step. So during the spend defense token step, when you spend a redirect defense token, you may reduce the total damage from the attack by 1 instead of resolving that token's effect. So remember, typically a redirect token, when you resolve a redirect token, for example, if I'm being shot in the front of this Archidans, you could spend a redirect to move that damage from the front hull zone to an adjacent hull zone. So either the left or the right. So if we took, for example, 2 damage on the front, we could say, you know what, I'm going to spend a redirect, and I'm going to move both of the damage from the front to the right. Perfect. That's what a typical redirect does. Now, they've changed it. They've added something different. Instead of moving damage, you can just flat out reduce 1 damage off this. So again, same example, getting shot in the front. Rather than moving 2 shields to the right, if I have Expert Shield Tech equipped, I can resolve the redirect defense token, and all it does is reduces that damage by 1, and you still take then 1 damage to the front of your Archidans. That is again that's while defending. It's in the spend defense token step. Is when you're choosing what tokens you're going to spend, and then when you move into the resolve damage step, that is then when you resolve its effect to reduce that damage with Expert Shield Tech. Now, I want to point out that there is a critical card in the game, the face-up damage card, that pretty much stops these guys cold, and that is Capacitor Failure. If a hull zone has no remaining shields, you cannot recover shields in it, nor move shields to it. If that hull zone is defending, you cannot spend redirect tokens. So what's great about expert shield techs is that even if the whole zone is being attacked and you, for example, don't have any shields there, just move this card off for a second, there's no shields there, as long as you have redirect tokens, you can still block 1 damage every attack as long as you've got the redirect tokens. Even if your ship has no shields at all, you can still spend those redirect tokens to block damage. It still makes that ship useful even though all the shields are gone. This is a very good card for the Archidans now. Archidans kind of struggled a little bit. Not so much of survivability, but staying relevant in a fight long enough because they would get shot once or twice and then they'd have to bug out. This allows them to keep allowing them to stay as a presence in a field or even on other ships that typically you want to take these on ships with double redirects. Anyway, getting off here. So, but yes, even if the whole zone has 0 shields remaining in it, you can still resolve the redirect defense token to block a damage. But again, not if you have capacitor failure. If you have capacitor failure, again, the you cannot spend redirect tokens is an absolute. It will block you from being able to use expert shield techs. So try to get rid of that card as soon as possible if you have it on one of your ships that has one of these guys equipped. Okay, let's move on now into some deep rule stuff with this card and just some funny wording with it. Now, I know I've talked about already essentially what the card does. It stops 1 damage, and that's pretty obvious when you read the card. However, when you get into the intricacies of the wording of this card could have been worded much better. Because the way they have it worded is confusing. Because it says during the spend defense token step, when you spend the redirect defense token, which is when you spend it, you may reduce the total damage from the attack by 1 instead of resolving that token's effect. Well, so by the card's definition, it's saying that you can reduce that total damage before you actually calculate damage, which in Armada, that's never the case. You always have to calculate damage to understand what damage is happening before you try to remove anything. Now, in the spend defense token step, you have a lot of cards that will cancel die. Okay, but again, it's not anything that's removing damage until this is only removing damage after it's been calculated, or as it says here, as it's been totaled. So there was a little timing thing. We talked about this on Discord. It's like, that's interesting. The wording on this just seems, for us rules gurus, it's very confusing. And myself, Drazenida, and Ian Cross, we all had a conversation about it. Ian provided a fantastic answer. I'm going to read his answer because I was going to sit down and research and do this all out, but Ian just powerhoused in with this really cool wording to kind of clear up some of this. So, Expert Shield Tech has no effect, or has to affect the damage suffered in Step 5 of the attack, similar to 7th Fleet or Major Durlin. The reason being thus, evades effect at long range applied during the spend defense token steps explicitly cancels an attack die. 7th Fleet and Major Durlin reduce the total damage. Damage being in the sum of all hit and crit icons as per RNG page 2 attack. There is no place in the attack steps for damage to be reduced before step 5, because the concept of damage doesn't exist during the spend defense token step. Redirect, Brace, and Contain are tokens that are spent during step 4 and applied during step 5. Evade and Scatter tokens that are spent and applied entirely during step 4, because the former deal with damage and the latter deal with canceling die. In the most rules correct fashion, Expert Shield Techs really should have been written while defending during the spend defense token step. When you spend a redirect defense token, you may, before you suffer damage, reduce the total damage from the attack by 1 instead of resolving that token's effect. The fact that the actual text does not actually contain that loophole closing text is just an oversight, because as mentioned, there is no other timing window for a damage reducing effect to even trigger outside of step 5 of the attack. So some of you guys that just read all that as probably just went way over your heads. Pretty much, we were trying to understand the wording of the card of why it says you could reduce damage from attack in the spend defense token step, and we just realized, as Ian said there, it's oversight. It's just oversight by the developers. They just didn't word it in the most correct way that they could have worded it. The wording that they used still works, but for us that are just so nitpicky about what words actually mean in Armada, like to us it threw us for a loop until we actually sat down like, oh no, wait, this is I mean, we definitely had the developers and playtesters be like, no, it's this way. But it's like, again, we have to nitpick every single part of their wording because part of our jobs is judges and such is to make sure that we're getting everything absolutely correct. And even though we understood that intent, we still have to talk it and lay it all out. So if somebody someday does have that question, we can answer it. You know. So that's Expert Shield Tech. I know I kind of went into a couple different points that doesn't really, cover the meat and bones of the card. But again, I like showing this kind of process to you guys to show that we're just not pulling stuff out of a hat. And I'm glad Ian Cross got to that question because I was gearing up to come home from work to have to sit down and research it. And Ian's fantastic. If you guys don't know Ian Cross, he's the former World's Judge for Star Wars Armada. He now works full-time with FFG, but he still pops on to help us with these really difficult questions when he has a spare moment. So just shout out to Ian Cross, who has inspired me to get into judging, has helped me get into judging in more official capacity at GenCon. Also, a huge shout out to Dreas Nida. Dreas Nida also was one of my guys that I look up to. I told him earlier that he's just the guy that I copy his homework in school. Without those two, I really wouldn't be here being able to explain this stuff to you. And by and large, I still know a lot and can do a lot. But whenever I get stumped, those are the two I turn to. And not only them, there's tons of people in the community, but those are the two that I am giving the biggest shout out to. But there's lots of others on the Discord who are judges for regionals, nationals, championships, or otherwise just extremely intelligent people. Again, they help talk this all out. It's not just me sitting down and being like, oh, it's this way, and that's how it is. So hopefully you guys enjoyed a little bit of that insight. But that's Expert Shield Tech. Of course, if you feel like I missed anything or got anything wrong, please be sure to point it out. Let us know. Tell me what your thoughts are on what I just explained to you. If you think it's kind of fascinating, do you want to learn more about that kind of stuff? Otherwise, this Saturday I will be holding a Q&A at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you'd like to join me, just hop on. There will be a live stream. Just, if you have any questions or something you don't understand, even if it's content I've already covered, I love engaging with the audience and talking with people. Pick my brain. You guys are fantastic, and hey, I'll catch you all next time.